Hello, chefs. Today we talk sous vide, what it is, and how to use it like a pro. I am Mark Grigsby, your chef and guide through this experience, and this is the IncrEDIBLE Discourse. Welcome to episode 22 of the IncrEDIBLE Discourse. We're almost to the end of the first season. I reflected a bit after I published the last episode and went through all of the episodes and listened. I'll just say that I can hear the progression, and my, have we come far. Thank you all for listening, subscribing, and liking everything that I put out. The brand is building quickly, more so than I thought it would almost a year ago when I started it. This season was just supposed to be a learning stage for me and ended up being more than I could ever imagine. So with that, if you're new to the show, or if you haven't already, hit the like and subscribe button. It helps us spread the word about your favorite podcast on the internet. So let's get into it. Sous vide. For a long time, those two words felt like they belonged to some secret chef's club. It sounded intimidating, almost futuristic. Like something happening behind closed doors in white tablecloth restaurants, or food labs where guys in lab coats were tinkering with beakers and thermometers. It wasn't something you'd imagine happening in a regular home kitchen. But fast forward to today, and things look a little different. You can buy a sous vide circulator at Target, Bed Bath & Beyond, or with our friends there at Amazon with one click. They're compact, affordable, and sit right on your countertop next to your blender or toaster, and home cooks are giving it a try. But here's the kicker. Most folks don't even know what to do with it. They'll cook a steak once, or maybe some chicken breasts, and then the machine ends up shoved in a cabinet collecting dust right next to that bread maker they swore they'd use every week. And that's where today's conversation comes in. Because sous vide isn't just another gadget. It's a technique. A tool in your arsenal that can make you a better cook, whether you're making dinner for your family on a Tuesday night or running service in a professional kitchen on a Saturday. So here's what we're going to cover in this episode. First, the foundation of sous vide, what it is, how it works, and why the science behind it actually is pretty simple once you understand it. Then we'll bring it back down to earth and talk about how home cooks can use it. The gear, the setup, the wins, and the common mistakes you'll want to avoid. And finally, we'll zoom out to the professional kitchen perspective. Because chefs aren't using sous vide just for fun, it solves real problems on the line and unlocks creative opportunities that you might not expect. By the end of this episode, my goal is that you walk away knowing that sous vide isn't mysterious, it isn't fancy, and definitely isn't just for chefs. It's precision. It's consistency, and it's a way for you to bring restaurant-level results into your own kitchen. All right, let's break it down. Let's start at the ground floor, sous vide. It's a French term that literally translates to under vacuum. Sounds fancy, right? But don't let the language trip you up. At its core, sous vide is one of the simplest, most logical cooking methods out there. And here's how it works. You take your food, let's say a steak, a piece of chicken, a fillet of salmon, even vegetables or eggs. You season it, seal it up in a bag, and then place it in a water bath that's held at a very specific temperature. That water bath is controlled by a device called an immersion circulator, which is basically just a high-tech thermometer with a heating element and a little propeller that keeps the water moving. It keeps the temperature steady, within a fraction of a degree, for as long as you need it. Now here's the part that blows people's minds the first time they try it. The food will never ever get hotter than the water that it's in. That means if you set your water bath to 135, your steak is never going to creep up to 160 and turn gray and chewy on you. It will cook to exactly 135, edge to edge, top to bottom, until you decide it's ready to come out. That low, steady heat is the secret. Unlike blasting food in a screaming hot oven or dropping it into a skillet that's 400 degrees and hoping you don't overshoot the mark, sous vide gives you control. It's like cruise control for cooking. You set the temperature you want, and the circulator takes it from there. No more guesswork. No more cutting into the chicken to see if it's cooked through. No more babysitting the stove. And the beauty is in the repeatability. Do it once, it works. Do it 10 times, it works. Every single steak, every single egg, every single time. That's why chefs fell in love with it in the first place. It takes the gamble out of cooking and replaces it with precision. So why does sous vide work so well? It comes down to gentleness and precision. Traditional cooking methods like, roasting, grilling, sautéing, are basically controlled chaos. You're applying heat that's way hotter than the doneness you actually want, and then racing the clock to pull it off before you overshoot. That's why we've all had dry chicken breasts or steak that went from perfect to ruin in 60 seconds. Sous vide flips that on its head. Instead of hammering your food with 400-degree heat, you're surrounding it with water that's just hot enough to get you to your target temperature, nothing more. That gentle approach preserves moisture in a way that ovens and pans just can't. Proteins don't seize up and squeeze out all their juices. Vegetables keep their snap and their color. Even delicate things like custards or fish hold together without breaking. And here's the real kicker. In sous vide, you can't overcook in the traditional sense. If your chicken breast is sitting in a 140-degree bath, it will never creep past 145 degrees. Leave it in an extra 15 minutes while you wrangle the kids or answer a phone call? No problem. That little buffer zone takes away the panic that comes with timing dinner perfectly. You've got breathing room. But the part I love the most is the precision. Think about a steak. Rare, medium. Those aren't just words anymore. Those are specific temperatures. And when you use sous vide, you get to dial it in. Want a steak that's 129 degrees from edge to edge with a buttery, almost melt-in-your-mouth texture? Set it there. Prefer 135 degrees, which is a little firmer, classic medium rare? Easy. You're not guessing. You're not eyeballing. You're fucking programming the result that you want. That's the magic of sous vide. It takes away the stress. It locks in the flavor and texture and gives you the power to cook with confidence, whether you're doing one piece of fish for yourself or cranking out 30 portions on the line. Now, before we go any further, let's clear up a couple of misconceptions about sous vide, because it's gotten a bad rap from people who don't really understand it. The first one I hear all the time is, "Oh, chef, well, that's just boiling food in a fucking bag." No, absolutely not. Boiling is 212 degrees Fahrenheit. Bubbling, rolling water, high heat that beats the life and the shit out of your food. Sous vide never goes anywhere near that. In fact, most of the time we're cooking between 120 degrees and 160 degrees, depending on the product that you're doing. And that's way below boiling. So it's not boiling, it's controlled bathing. Gentle heat, steady and precise, with none of that violent agitation that boiling brings. The bag isn't there to boil the food. It's there to keep the water out and the flavor in. The second misconception is that sous vide is only for meat. Sure, it's incredible for steak, chicken, pork, lamb, you name it. But limiting it to just meat is like saying a blender is only good for smoothies. You're missing out on the entire universe of applications. Eggs, for example, you can take them from jammy, yolky ramen eggs to silky, custard-like textures that are almost impossible to nail consistently on the stove. Vegetables? Sous vide carrots taste like carrots turned up to fucking 11. Bright, sweet, and perfectly tender without being mushy. And then there are desserts and infusions. Custards like creme brulee come out velvety and smooth. No curdling, no split. Infused oils, flavored syrups, or even cocktail spirits all benefit from that low, controlled heat. I've made strawberry-infused vodka sous vide in an hour that tastes like it's been steeping for weeks. That's the creative side people just don't talk about enough. So let's put it to rest. Sous vide is not boiling in a fucking bag, and it's definitely not just for meat. It's a technique, a versatile one, that opens doors across the board, from proteins to produce to pastry to bar service. Now, before we move on, let's zoom out for a second, because sous vide didn't just pop up when the company decided to sell circulators on Amazon. This technique has roots that stretch way back. Believe it or not, the idea of cooking food gently at low temperatures goes all the way back to the 1700s. A British physicist named Sir Benjamin Thompson, also known as Count Rumford, was messing around with heat experiments. He noticed that when he cooked meat slowly in low, steady heat, it stayed juicy instead of drying out. He didn't have vacuum bags or circulators, but he planted the seed. He basically figured out that gentleness preserved the quality. Now, fast forward to the 1970s in France, right? And we finally get what we now call sous vide. Chef Georges Pralis was working at a legendary 3-star Michelin spot, Trois Goûts, and he had a problem. Foie gras. Whenever he cooked it, it would shrink, lose fat, and lose money. Not good, right? So he tried sealing it up and cooking it gently in a controlled bath. And boom, problem solved. The foie kept its fat, its texture, its flavor. That's the moment sous vide really took shape in fine dining. Around this same time, food scientist Bruno Gasol was working on the science side of this technique, looking at how proteins reacted at different temperatures, figuring out the food safety side of things, and creating time and temperature charts that, shit, we still use today. If Pralis was the chef who discovered the practical how, Gasol was the scientist who nailed down the why. He trained a whole generation of chefs, and that's why people called him the father of modern-day sous vide. Through the 80s and 90s, sous vide spread in Europe's fine dining world. But here's the thing. You didn't hear chefs bragging about it. Oh no. They kept the shit quiet. Why? Because it was their edge. If you can serve a steak that's perfect every single time, or a foie that never loses yield, why would you give that secret away? God, chefs and their competitiveness. Silly as it may be, shit's real in the field here. Anyway, it wasn't until the 2000s that the doors blew wide open. For decades, sous vide equipment was massive and insanely expensive. Think restaurants, hotels, food labs. But then companies like Polyscience started making smaller circulators. And by the 2010s, brands like Anova and Joule dropped prices under $200 and made them slick enough to sit at home on a kitchen counter. Suddenly, the technique that was once locked away in Michelin kitchens became accessible to anybody with a pot of water and a little curiosity. So when you hear people say sous vide is a new trend, it's really not at all. It's centuries of ideas, refined in the 70s, perfected in fine dining, and now democratized for your kitchen. And now that we have immersion circulation circulating our minds, you know what time it is. It's time for
Food for Thought,
or what I like to call
Pro tips from a chef's list.
So we've talked about the foundations, the science, the myths, even the history of sous vide. But let's bring it down to where most of us actually live, the home kitchen. Because here's the truth. Most of you listening aren't running a restaurant line. You're trying to get dinner on the table, meal prep for the week, or maybe impress a few friends on the weekend. And this is where sous vide really shines. So why does it matter at home? Because it delivers consistency without requiring culinary training. You don't have to go to culinary school. You don't need years of experience on the line. You set a fucking temperature, drop in the food, and the circulator does all of the heavy lifting. That's a game changer for home cooks. It takes away the stress of second-guessing yourself and lets you cook with confidence. Think about steak. Everybody wants that perfect restaurant-quality steak at home. But most people are guessing, poking it with their finger, cutting into it to check the color, or worse, just hoping that the shit's done. With sous vide, you don't have to guess. You want medium rare? Set it to 129. Medium, set it to 135. And that's it. Every single time, it comes out perfect from edge to edge. No surprises, no disappointment, no wasting $20 on a cut of beef because you fucked it up. And here's another win. Meal prep. Let's say you're trying to eat healthy during the week. You buy a pack of chicken breasts. You set your sous vide to 145 degrees, season and bag them, and then let them cook while you're doing something else. 45 minutes later, you've got perfectly juicy chicken. Shock them in ice water, stick them in the fridge, and now you've got a protein ready to go for the next 5 days. Toss it in a salad, stir it in a stir fry, or sear it quickly for dinner. It's versatile, it's prepped, and it actually tastes fucking good. Sous vide matters at home because it saves you from the two things that kill most home cooking: inconsistency and lack of time. It's the safety net that makes you look like you know exactly what the fuck you're doing, even if you're just starting out. All right, so now you've listened to my rant for, 18 minutes. And you're sitting here and you're thinking, okay, chef, this sounds cool, but what do I actually need to get started with this? And here's the good news. Not much. One of the reasons sous vide has exploded in home kitchens over the last decade is that the gear has gotten insanely affordable and user-friendly. Back in the day, if you wanted sous vide equipment, you were looking at bulky machines the size of a mini fridge that cost a couple grand. Now, you can hop online and grab a quality immersion circulator for about $100. That's less than most people spend on a decent chef's knife. Brands like Anova, Breville Jewel, and others have made them small, sleek, and dead simple to use. Clamp it onto the side of a pot, punch in your temperature and time, and you're in business. And that's the beauty of it. You don't need a fancy setup, a stock pot, which you probably already own, a clamp-on circulator, and a few zip-top freezer bags will get you going. Sure, of course, vacuum sealers are nice, but don't let that be the fucking barrier. As long as you have a good quality freezer bag and press the air out, you're gold. I've made some incredible meals using nothing but Ziploc bags and a little patience. Now, one of the most overlooked steps is seasoning before you seal that bag. Don't just drop a raw steak in a bag and call it a day. This is your chance to build layers of flavor that will infuse as the food gently cooks. Think fresh herbs like thyme or rosemary, slices of citrus for chicken or fish, a splash of olive oil, a dab of butter, or even a light marinade. Keep it simple, because sous vide intensifies flavors. You don't need to go heavy-handed. The key is balance. And here's a pro tip. You know, I love our pro tips that we share. And here's this one for sous vide. Avoid adding raw garlic or onions directly into the bag unless you've sauteed them first. This is for real, guys. In the low oxygen environment of sous vide, they can turn harsh or metallic. Stick to dried spices, seared aromatics, or fresh herbs, and you'll be good to go. No raw garlic, no raw onion. And there you have it. The tools are simple, affordable, and seasoning is where the magic starts. So, no excuses, no barriers, and with about the same investment as a night out at a nice restaurant, you can unlock restaurant-quality results in your own kitchen. This is where sous vide starts to feel like a cheat code in your kitchen. Because once you've nailed the basics, you start realizing, well, what the hell else can I do with this thing? And that's when the light bulb really goes off. Let's talk eggs for a second. Yeah, I know we already mentioned them, but here's the deal. Sous vide doesn't just cook the egg, it lets you program their texture. You want that soft-boiled, jammy yolk for ramen? Dial that shit in. You want a perfectly custardy egg for brunch that spreads like butter on toast? Same machine, different temp. And once you find your favorite, you can replicate it every single time. No pot of boiling water, no ice bath timers. It's just fucking done. Now, chicken breast. It's probably the most abused protein in home kitchens. Normally, you overcook it because you're scared of serving it raw, and you end up with something dry and stringy. With sous vide, that doesn't happen. What you get instead is chicken that's juicy, tender, and actually tastes like chicken. And here's a fresh spin. You don't just stop it plain. Marinate it in yogurt and spices, sous vide it, and then finish it on the grill. You have chicken that eats like restaurant-quality kebabs, or drop a little miso paste in the bag and watch the flavor transform. It's an entirely new experience. But let's step outside the obvious. Sous vide is an incredible tool for the bar too. We're talking infused spirits and syrups that taste like they've been steeping for weeks, but you knock them out in an hour. Imagine vanilla bean bourbon or jalapeno tequila for margaritas, or a simple syrup infused with fresh herbs. That's not just a kitchen win, it's a party trick. And don't sleep on vegetables either. Carrots come out tasting like the carrot version of candy. Beets hold their color. Asparagus stays snappy instead of turning limp. It's like you finally get to taste what those vegetables were meant to taste like. The beauty of these home wins isn't that they're flashy, it's that they raise the floor of your cooking. Suddenly, the things you cook all the time taste better, look better, and make you look like you've got a secret weapon in the kitchen. Because you do. All right, so sous vide is powerful. Yes, we've cleared that up. But let's get some clarity here. It's not foolproof. Like anything in the kitchen, there are mistakes that can trip you up if you're not paying attention. The first big one is skipping the sear. Look, I don't care how perfect that steak comes out of the bag. If you serve it straight to the plate, it's going to look sad. Gray, lifeless, no crust, no character. The final sear isn't optional. It's essential. It's where you get the Maillard reaction, the browning, the caramelization, the aroma that makes a steak smell like fucking steak. And it doesn't take much. A ripping hot pan, a touch of oil, 30 seconds on each side, and that's it. Think of the sous vide as the engine that gets you to the perfect doneness, but the sear, that's the paint job, the rims, the finish. So under no circumstances, skip this step. The second pitfall is letting food linger too long. One of the biggest selling points of sous vide is that it's forgiving, right? You can overshoot the cooking window without ruining dinner. But here's the fine print. If you let food sit for hours past the ideal cook time, the texture starts to break down. Proteins get mushy, vegetables get too soft, eggs get weirdly fucking grainy. It's not about safety, it's about quality. So yeah, you've got a buffer, but don't treat it like an unlimited parking meter. You got to know your ranges and stick to them. And the last one is poor sealing. The bag isn't just packaging. It's your barrier. If you don't get a good seal, water can sneak in and then you end up with diluted flavors, soggy textures, or worst case scenario, your food floating half out of the bath, not cooking evenly. A vacuum sealer is great if you've got one, but even with the zip top bags, you've got to take the time to press the air out. Do it right, and you'll avoid a watery mess. So yeah, sous vide takes away a lot of stress of cooking, but it's not magic. You got to respect the sear, watch your times, and seal your bags properly, and you'll be rewarded every single time. And that's really the beauty of sous vide for the home cook. It's not about being flashy or trendy. It's about raising the bar in your own kitchen. Suddenly, the basics get easier, the results get more consistent, and you've got the tools to prep smarter, cook with confidence, and maybe even show off a little bit. It's that feeling of opening a bag, slicing into a chicken breast, and realizing, wow, I actually nailed it this time. No stress, no guesswork, just results. And when cooking at home feels that reliable, it stops being a chore and starts being fun again. All right, now that we've seen how sous vide empowers home cooks, let's step into my world for a second. Because in a professional kitchen, sous vide isn't just a neat trick, it's a lifeline. It's about consistency, cost control, and creativity at scale. Let's talk about how the pros really use it. So here's where sous vide goes from being a fun trick to a straight-up weapon in professional kitchens. Because when you're cooking for 1 or 2 at home, consistency is nice. But when you're cooking for 50, 100, or even 300 covers a night, consistency is survival. Sous vide gives us precision on the line. Let's take steaks as an example. On a busy Saturday night, I might have 20 steaks on the board at once, and every single one of them has to hit the table exactly as the guest ordered it. Medium rare, rare plus, you name it. If you're relying only on pan roasting or grilling, you're juggling timers, poking meat, and praying nothing slips through the cracks. But with sous vide, all those steaks can be cooked to the same internal temperature ahead of time. When the order comes in, I pull one from the bath, hit it with a hard sear, and send it out. It's identical every time. No guessing, no wasted cuts. And it's not just steak. Service efficiency is where sous vide shines. You can hold proteins at their perfect doneness, safe and stable, for extended periods of time. Salmon fillets, pork chops, chicken breasts, they all sit ready to go. And when that ticket prints, it's finished to order in just a couple of minutes. That means faster service, fewer mistakes, and happier guests. And then there are dishes that really show off what sous vide can do. Think about short ribs. Normally, you'd braise them for hours and get that tender meat, but sometimes it either falls apart or it dries out. With sous vide, you can hold those ribs at a precise temperature for 48 hours, low and slow, without losing moisture. The result is short ribs that are fork tender but still juicy and sliceable, with a texture you just cannot get from traditional braising. Or even salmon. Traditionally, it's one of the easiest proteins to fuck up. It goes from delicate and buttery to chalky in the blink of an eye. But sous vide lets us lock in that perfect silky texture every single time. Even custards and desserts benefit. Creme brulee, for instance, cooks gently and evenly without curdling. No guessing with oven water baths or no cracked tops, just silky, consistent custard every single ramekin. So when you step into a professional kitchen and see sous vide in action, it's not some novelty gadget. It's a fucking system. It's about speed, precision, and making sure that when the plate hits the pass, it's exactly what the guests expected. Here's the part that doesn't get talked about enough outside professional kitchens. Sous vide isn't just about perfect textures and brag-worthy steaks. It's also about control. Control over your product, your costs, and your waste. And if you've ever run a kitchen before, you know those 3 things can make or break you. First, let's talk shrinkage. When you throw a steak or a chicken breast on a grill or into the oven, it loses moisture, sometimes up to 20% of its weight. That's water, fat, and literally flavor evaporating into thin air. With sous vide, the food is sealed in a bag, and the gentle cooking environment keeps those juices where they belong, inside the product. That means when I portion an 8-ounce steak, the guest actually gets an 8-ounce steak on the plate, not a 6.5-ounce version that shrank along the way. Multiply that across hundreds of portions in a week, and you're talking about serious savings. Then there's portion control. In a high-volume kitchen, consistency isn't just about cooking. It's about knowing exactly what you're serving. When proteins are prepped and sealed individually, you're locking in your portion sizes. No extra ounce slipping by here, no underportion there. It's all dialed in for you. That kind of precision is gold for food cost management. And believe me, the GM does notice when the numbers come in tighter. And finally, shelf life. Vacuum sealing doesn't just keep the water out during cooking. It extends how long that product lasts in your walk-in. A vacuum sealed protein, properly chilled after cooking, will hold longer than something sitting on a sheet tray. That means less spoilage, less food getting tossed, and a more efficient kitchen overall. When you stack it all up, less shrinkage, tighter portions, and longer shelf life, you're not just cooking smarter, you're running a more profitable kitchen. And that's why sous vide has gone from being a fancy chef trick to a fundamental part of kitchen systems worldwide. And now here's the fun part. Sous vide isn't only about consistency and cost savings. It's also a playground for creativity. Once you understand the basics, it becomes a tool that lets you explore flavors and textures in ways you probably never even imagined. Let's start with infusions. And we talked about this in the home cook, but let's apply this to the professional kitchen, all right? Normally, if you want to infuse an oil with herbs or make a flavored spirit for cocktails, you're looking at days, sometimes weeks of steeping. You're waiting for time and temperature to do their deal. But sous vide flips the script. Take basil oil, for example. Drop fresh basil into olive oil, seal it, and let it go at a gentle temp in the water bath for an hour. The result is a bright green, intensely aromatic basil oil that tastes just like it came off the plant. Same thing with booze. Jalapeno tequila, vanilla bourbon, strawberry vodka. Instead of waiting a month, you get full, developed flavor in just an afternoon. That's a chef's dream, but it's also a bartender's secret weapon. And then there are pickles and quick preserves. This is sort of part 2 of the last episode. We're talking about pickles for the last 2 weeks. But you can take vegetables, add a brine, seal it up, and let the sous vide gently coax these flavors together. It doesn't replace traditional fermentation, no, but it gives you this fast-track pickle that's crisp, flavorful, and ready in hours, not fucking days. Think compressed cucumbers, watermelon with chili and lime, or even sous vide pickled shallots that are ready to top a dish before service is over. Now let's talk tough cuts. Short ribs, brisket, pork shoulder, cuts that usually demand long braises or slow roasting. The problem with traditional methods is that you often sacrifice moisture to get tenderness. With sous vide, you don't. You can hold a short rib at 135 degrees for 48 hours and it comes out tender enough to cut with a fork, but still juicy, still sliceable. That texture is almost impossible to achieve any other way. And once you unlock that, you start asking, what the fuck else can I do? Which brings us to marinades and layered flavors. When you vacuum seal something, you're not just keeping water out. You're creating an environment where flavors penetrate more deeply and evenly. A little soy sauce, ginger, and garlic on salmon, that flavor doesn't just sit on the outside, it mingles with the fish, infuses it during the gentle cook, and gives you a depth that's hard to achieve in a pan or an oven. You can build complexity in a controlled way, dialing in exactly how strong or subtle you want those notes to be. And here's what I love about the whole thing. Sous vide doesn't replace creativity. It amplifies it. It gives you control over the boring parts, the make sure it's cooked part, so that you can focus on the fun shit. You can experiment, you can push boundaries, you can do it all without fear of ruining your base product. That's freedom in the kitchen. So yes, sous vide is practical, but don't forget, it's also playful. It's a tool that lets chefs and home cooks explore what food could be, not just what it has to be. When you look at how chefs use sous vide, it's really the full package. On one side, it's a workhorse, a way to guarantee precision on the line, keep service running smooth, cut down on waste, and protect the bottom line. On the other side, it's a creative engine, opening doors to flavors, textures, and techniques that simply weren't possible before. That's why sous vide went from being a secret weapon in Michelin kitchens to a permanent part of the professional toolbox. It solves problems, it saves money, and it inspires dishes that make people stop and say, wow, how the fuck did they do that? The big takeaway here is all of that, the consistency, the control, the creativity, isn't just locked up in restaurants, it's sitting on your kitchen counter. So use that shit. Today's final thought leads us to this. Sous vide isn't just for chefs with expensive gear tucked away in the back of a fine dining kitchen. It's the most approachable way to achieve restaurant quality results right in your own home. Whether you're cooking for yourself, for your family, or for a room full of guests, This method gives you consistency, confidence, and the freedom to focus on flavor instead of fighting the heat. What I love about sous vide is that it bridges the gap. It gives the home cook a tool that makes dinner less stressful, and it gives the professional chef a system that keeps service under control while unlocking creativity. That's not a gimmick. That's not a fad. It's a technique. And once you understand it, it just becomes second nature. Now, looking ahead, in episode 24, next time, we're going to dive into another cornerstone of cooking science: emulsifying. Oil and water don't mix until they do. And I'm going to break down how emotions work, why they matter, and how mastering them is like unlocking a little bit of culinary magic. You're not going to want to miss it, so tune in 2 weeks. So before we wrap, I want to hear from you. Try a sous vide experiment this week: a steak, chicken, veggies, or even a cocktail infusion. And share it with me on X using the hashtag #IncrEDIBLEDiscourse. I'll be shouting out some of your dishes and stories in future episodes. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe on Spotify, YouTube, and Amazon so you never miss an episode. Head over to the blog as well, where I've got a Sous Vide 101 guide waiting for you there. And yes, we're working on making it a downloadable resource so you can keep it right in your kitchen next to your nice, beautiful sous vide machine that you got on Amazon. Precision isn't about perfection. It's about consistency, creativity, and confidence in every single dish. Keep cooking, chefs. I am Mark Grigsby, and this has been another amazing episode of the IncrEDIBLE Discourse.